My family tried to take my inheritance, but I outplayed them and left them speechless. My uncle's hand was already on the manila folder when I reached the dining table, like he'd been waiting for the exact second I walked in to pounce. The house smelled like stale coffee and the lemon-scented cleaner my aunt uses when she's trying to make a place feel respectable, and the air was thick with too many bodies holding in too many opinions. Chair scraped. Someone's phone buzzed and got silenced too aggressively. My mom wouldn't meet my eyes. She kept smoothing the table runner like the fabric needed, saving more than I did. Just sign it, my Aunt Rita said, voice sugary in a way that made my skin prickle. It's not a big deal. It's what Nan would have wanted. Across from her, my cousin Jordan chewed the inside of his cheek, pretending he didn't care while he watched every movement I made. The folder slid toward me like a plate of food I didn't order. I saw the title through the plastic sleeve, Deed of Family Arrangement. My throat tightened so hard it felt like swallowing glass. I didn't sit. If I sat, they'd lean in, they'd crowd me, they'd make it feel like I was trapped at the bottom of the table again, 16 years old, and being told I was overreacting. I kept my palms on the chair back behind me, fingers digging into the wood for something solid, and asked as evenly as I could, "What is this?" Uncle Steve's smile didn't reach his eyes. He tapped the signature line with a thick finger and said, "It's just to keep things simple, love." Rita chimed in. Everyone's agreed. We're trying to be fair. My mom finally spoke, barely above a whisper. Please don't make this harder. The way she said it, pleading, pre-apologizing, made my stomach drop because it meant she already knew it wasn't fair. My uncle leaned closer, lowering his voice like he was giving me a secret. If you sign tonight, we can avoid all the ugly stuff. He nodded toward the hallway where my grandmother's photo still sat on the console table in a frame surrounded by condolence cards. You don't want lawyers. You don't want drama. Do the right thing. It had been a Wednesday night 3 weeks earlier when I sat on my couch in my tiny unit, funeral pamphlets still folded in my bag, and read my grandmother's last text to me for the 100th time. Don't let them talk you out of your life, it said. I'd thought at the time she was being dramatic. My grandmother loved a blunt warning, like she was tossing you a torch in the dark. But after the funeral, the warnings stopped feeling dramatic and started feeling like a map. The day after we buried her, my Aunt Rita called me and said, "We'll just handle the paperwork, sweetheart. You're busy." My Uncle Steve texted, "Come by Sunday. We need to chat as a family." My mom kept saying, "They're grieving. Be patient," like grief excuses strategy. And then the first lie arrived, casual, tossed like confetti. "Nan didn't mean it like that," Rita said. "Nan was confused," Steve said. "Nan wouldn't leave the house to you," Jordan added, laughing like he was stating a fact everyone knew. They said it so often it started to sound true, until I remembered something. My grandmother had been sharper than any of them right up until the end. She'd forgotten where she put her glasses sometimes, sure, but she never forgot exactly who people were when no one was clapping for them. My grandmother, Evelyn, wasn't rich in the flashy sense. She didn't have stocks or beach houses or jewelry hidden in drawers like a movie. What she had was stubbornness, a paid-off little weatherboard house in a suburb that had gotten expensive without asking permission, and a quiet habit of saving every spare dollar like she was saving it from someone. She raised 3 kids, my mom, my Uncle Steve, and my Aunt Rita, and then spent the rest of her life watching them orbit her like planets that occasionally crashed into her kitchen demanding resources. I was the oldest grandchild, the one who was always good, always available, always the person Nan called when she needed someone to fix her TV remote or carry heavy bags or just sit with her and watch the news so she didn't feel alone. It wasn't martyr stuff. It was normal. It was who we were to each other, and didn't talk about love like a poem. She talked about it like a grocery list. You show up. You listen. You don't take what isn't yours. When she got sick last year, the family dynamic shifted in that ugly way it does when people smell a finish line. Rita started dropping by with her phone out, taking photos of Nan from memories, which mostly looked like screenshots of Nan's house, the kitchen, the backyard, the new hot water system Nan had installed. Steve suddenly cared about Nan's stress levels, but only when the topic was bills, asking, Are you sure you're not behind? Jordan offered to help with errands and then left with random items Nan later asked me about. And my mom kept trying to be the peacekeeper, which in our family means you volunteer someone else to get hurt so the room stays quiet. I've been dealing with my own life, work deadlines, rent, trying to keep my brain from spiraling. But I still drove out to Nan's twice a week, sat at the edge of her bed, massaged lotion into her paper-thin hands, and listened to her talk about everything and nothing. Sometimes she'd say, out of nowhere, they think I don't see it. And I'd say, see what? And she'd just blink at me, calm and tired, like she didn't want to waste energy explaining something obvious. 2 days before she died, Nan asked me to bring her a notepad. She wrote slowly, pausing between words like her body was negotiating with gravity. When she finished, she tore the page out and folded it twice. Put this in your bag, she said. Don't open it yet. I remember laughing nervously because death makes everything feel like superstition. Nan, what is it? I asked. She gave me that look, half annoyed, half amused, that always made me feel 8 years old. Just do it, she said. And when they start acting like seagulls, you'll know why. I didn't open the note until after the funeral, after the casseroles and the sad hugs, and the way everyone suddenly got very interested in who was handling the estate. I was sitting on my couch, wearing the same black dress I'd worn all day, because I didn't have the energy to be a different person. My phone had been buzzing with messages. Rita telling me, we need to keep it in the family. Steve saying, it's complicated. Jordan sending a thumbs-up emoji like he was approving my grief. I opened Nan's note with fingers that felt clumsy. Her handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. If you're reading this, they've already started. I am sorry. You don't owe anyone your safety. The will is with Margaret. Don't sign anything they bring you. Bring your own folder. You've always been the one who reads the fine print. Love you, Ev. Margaret was Nan's solicitor. I met her once, years ago, when Nan was selling an old car and wanted someone official to look at paperwork. Margaret had been brisk, kind, and completely unimpressed by my uncle's charm. The next morning, I called her office. My voice shook so badly the receptionist asked if I was okay. I said, my grandmother, Evelyn Harris, has passed. I need to talk to Margaret about her will. There was a pause. Then the receptionist's tone shifted into gentle professionalism. Of course. One moment. Margaret called me back that afternoon. I was expecting your call, she said, and I felt a cold wave roll down my spine. Evelyn told me this might happen. She didn't say your family might try something. She said this might happen, like it was weather. You're listed as executor, she continued. And yes, Evelyn left the house to you. I couldn't speak for a second. The room felt too quiet. My fridge hummed. A car alarm went off outside and then stopped. Me? I finally managed. You, Margaret said. There are specific reasons noted in a letter she asked me to provide to you, and I will when you're ready. But the will is valid, properly witnessed, and very clear. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there with my hand over my mouth, eyes burning. It wasn't just the house. It was what it meant. Nan had chosen me publicly, on paper, in a way that couldn't be laughed off. And she knew, somehow, that they'd come for it. That's when I started building my folder. Not out of revenge. Out of self-defense. I asked Margaret for certified copies of the will. I asked what a deed of family arrangement was and under what circumstances people use one. Margaret was careful with her words. She didn't tell me what to do. She told me what things meant. It's a document used to redistribute an estate, often to avoid dispute, she said. Sometimes it's legitimate. Sometimes it's pressure. You do not sign anything without advice. I put a hold on my credit just in case. I asked Margaret about lodging the will for probate and what steps came next. I started writing down every interaction, dates, messages, the phrases they used. I hated how paranoid it made me feel, like I'd become one of those people who keeps receipts because they enjoy drama. But I didn't enjoy it. My stomach hurt every time I opened the Notes app. I just didn't want to be naive. I also asked Margaret one more thing. Did Nan leave anything else? Margaret paused. She left a letter, she said. One for you and one for the family. She requested the family letter be read if there was any attempt to challenge the will or pressure you. She let that hang. Evelyn was very aware. So when Steve texted, "Sunday night, family meeting, be there," I didn't argue. I didn't say no. I didn't warn them I knew. I just showed up with my own folder in my bag, heart pounding, trying to keep my face neutral, which is how I ended up standing in my grandmother's dining room. Her dining room with her old placemat still on the table, her curtains still smelling like her lavender detergent, watching my uncle slide a deed toward me like I was a stubborn employee who needed to be managed. Uncle Steve tapped the page again. "If you sign, we can sell the house and split it evenly," he said. That's what Nan would have wanted. Equal. Fair. Rita nodded vigorously. She'd hate family fighting. "And you're young, sweetheart. You don't need that big place anyway. It's too much. Too expensive. You'll drown in maintenance." Jordan leaned back, smirking. "And you don't even have kids," he added, like my uterus was a legal argument. My mom finally looked at me, eyes pleading. Maybe it's better," she whispered, "just to keep peace." I stared at her and felt something hot rise behind my eyes. Not tears, not yet, just that sting of disbelief. Because my mom knew. She knew what this was. She just wanted me to absorb it, so she wouldn't have to choose sides. I took my bag off my shoulder slowly and placed it on the chair beside me. My hands weren't steady, but I kept my movements deliberate. "What happens if I don't sign?" I asked, voice calm. Steve's smile tightened. "Then we'll have to contest," he said, like it was a weather report. Nan wasn't herself at the end. Rita made a sad face. "We don't want to do that to you," she said softly, as if the threat was kindness. I nodded once, like I was processing. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out my folder. It landed on the table with a quiet thump that made everyone's eyes flick to it. Steve's brows knitted. Rita's mouth tightened. Jordan's smirk faded slightly, like he'd just realized I wasn't here to be herded. "What's that?" Mom asked, voice thin. "My paperwork," I said. "Since you brought yours." Steve tried to laugh. "Oh, come on." I opened my folder and slid out the certified copy of the will. I didn't wave it around. I placed it in the center of the table, neat. Then I placed Margaret's business card on top like a small, sharp punctuation mark. "This is Nan's will," I said, and I heard my voice echo slightly in the room because everyone had gone quiet. "It's valid. It names me as executor. It leaves the house to me." Rita's face flushed. "That can't be right," she snapped, the sugar melting off instantly. "She wouldn't." "She did," I said, still calm. "And before you say she wasn't herself, Margaret, her solicitor, says it was properly executed and witnessed. Nan updated it months ago, not in the last week. Months." Steve's jaw worked like he was chewing words. "Evelyn was manipulated," he said, voice hard now. "You were always around her." I blinked at him. "I visited my grandmother," I replied. "If you're calling that manipulation, that says more about you than me." Jordan scoffed, but sounded weaker. "So you're just going to take it?" he muttered. I looked at him. "I'm going to follow Nan's instructions," I said, "which is what you're supposed to do when someone dies." My mom's eyes were wet. "Why wouldn't she leave it to us?" she whispered, and that hurt more than anything because it wasn't anger. It was genuine confusion. My mom had spent her whole life believing love comes with an equal split attached, like affection is a pie. I didn't answer her immediately. I reached back into my folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. It was plain, cream, with handwriting on the front, for the family. My throat tightened. Nan wrote a letter, I said. Margaret gave it to me with instructions to read it if anyone tried to pressure me to change the will. Steve's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." I didn't respond. I slid a finger under the flap, opened it carefully, and pulled out the letter. The paper was thick. Nan's handwriting was shaky, but familiar, the way she always wrote like she meant every word. Rita leaned forward, eyes hungry, like she wanted to snatch it. I read it out loud. Nan's letter wasn't long, but it was surgical. She wrote that she loved her children, but she wasn't blind to the way they treated each other when money was involved. She wrote that she'd watch them ask and take and justify it as family. She wrote that she'd watch my mom apologize for other people's bad behavior to keep the peace. She wrote that she'd watched Steve and Rita only show up when something needed signing. She wrote that Jordan had taken items from the house without asking and that she'd noticed. She wrote, very plainly, that she was leaving the house to me because I was the one who showed up without being paid, the one who listened, the one who didn't treat her like a bank account with legs. Then she ended with one line that made the room feel like it tilted. If you are reading this because you are pressuring her, then you are proving I was right. When I finished, my voice was steady, but my hand was shaking so hard I had to put the letter down on the table before it crumpled. Silence hit like a wall. My mom made a small sound like a hiccup swallowed. Her face was wet. Not dramatic crying, quiet, shocked crying. Steve's face had gone pale in patches, red in others. Rita stared at the letter like it had insulted her personally. Jordan's mouth opened, then closed, like he didn't know what to do when the crazy narrative didn't fit. Steve recovered first because people like him always do. He leaned back and forced a laugh that didn't sound like amusement. "So, she turned you against us," he said. "Classic." I looked at him, and didn't have to turn me. I replied quietly, "You did that yourselves." Rita slammed her hand on the table. "This is disgusting," she snapped. "She's punishing us." "She's making a choice," I said. "That's not punishment." Jordan muttered. "So what now? We're going to kick us out?" I took a slow breath. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and grief. "No," I said. "I'm not doing a victory lap. I don't want any of this to be like a game." I swallowed hard because my throat was tight. "But I am not signing your deed." Steve's eyes sharpened. "Then we'll contest," he said again, and this time it was pure threat. I nodded once. "Okay," I said. "Then you can do that through Margaret, not through my mom, not through dinner ambushes, not through guilt. Ritoskuft. You think you can afford a legal fight?" I looked at her. "You think I'm unprepared?" I said softly. "That's the whole problem." And then I did the part that actually made them go still. I slid one more document onto the table. Margaret's letter confirming probate steps had already been initiated, along with a summary of the will's execution date and witnesses. Not dramatic, not flashy. Just reality. Official letterhead has a way of cutting through bluffing. Steve stared at it. Rita's lips parted slightly. Jordan's eyes flicked to Steve like, "What now?" I said, then planned. She didn't do this impulsively. She didn't do it confused. She did it with a solicitor, with witnesses, months ago. And she left you a letter because she knew you'd try this. My mom whispered my name, broken. "Why didn't she tell me?" she asked, and her voice sounded like a child's. I looked at my mom and felt a wave of sadness, so heavy I could barely breathe. "Mom," I said gently, "because you would have tried to make it fair." And Nan didn't want fair. She wanted safe. That landed differently. Mom's shoulders sagged like she'd been carrying something for years, and just realized she'd been carrying it wrong. Steve stood up, so abruptly his chair scraped the floor. "This is bullshit," he snapped, grabbing the deed folder. "You're ruining the family." Rita followed, collecting her purse with shaking hands. "Don't come crying when you're alone in that house," she hissed at me, eyes bright with anger and something like fear. Jordan lingered a second longer, staring at the table, then at the letter. For a flicker of a moment, he looked embarrassed. Then he scoffed, like embarrassment was weakness, and followed them out. The front door slammed hard enough that Nan's framed photo on the hall console rattled. My mom stayed sitting. She stared at the letter like it was a mirror she didn't want to look into. "I didn't know," she whispered. I sat down finally, because my legs couldn't hold me anymore. My hands were cold. My chest felt hollow. "I think part of you did," I said, and my voice came out tired rather than cruel. "I think you just didn't want to." Mom's face crumpled. "I just wanted everyone to stop fighting," she said. "I know," I said, and it hurt to say it because it meant I understood her and still couldn't save her from the consequences of her choices. "But you kept choosing peace over truth, and now truth feels like violence." We sat there in silence for a while. Somewhere in the house, the fridge hummed. The air conditioner clicked on and off like it couldn't decide what temperature grief should be. After that night, the messages started. Rita sent a text that said, "You're dead to me." Steve left a voicemail full of rage and righteousness, calling me greedy, calling me disrespectful, saying Nan had been poisoned against them. Jordan posted a vague Facebook status about snakes in the family. My phone filled with aunties asking, "Is it true?" And cousins asking, "What happened?" Like I'd become a news story. I didn't respond to everyone. I didn't defend myself in group chats. I didn't post receipts online. I just forwarded everything to Margaret. And here's the part that made them truly speechless, even though it wasn't dramatic. They couldn't make me react the way they wanted. They wanted me crying. They wanted me screaming. They wanted me begging them to forgive me so they could control the terms again. Instead, I kept it boring. I kept it professional. I kept it through the solicitor. Margaret lodged the paperwork. A formal notice went out. Their threats moved from my phone to official channels, where they suddenly had to be careful about what they claimed. She manipulated Nan, became "We have concerns." She stole, became "We request clarification." Because lies sound powerful at a dinner table and pathetic on letterhead. 2 months later, Steve and Rita tried to get other relatives to sign statements about Nan's confusion. It fell apart because Nan's GP records didn't support it, the witness statements didn't support it, and this is my favorite quiet detail. Nan had written a short video message with Margaret present, months earlier, stating clearly that she knew what she was doing and why. Margaret didn't even have to use it. The mere existence of it made their solicitor advise them to back off. When I finally got the keys, officially, legally, in a little envelope from Margaret's office, I sat in my car outside Nan's house and cried so hard I gave myself a headache. Not triumphant crying, grief crying. The kind where you realize winning and losing aren't the right words, because what you wanted was her, not the thing she left behind. I moved into the house slowly. I didn't touch her bedroom for weeks. I left her mug by the sink. I kept expecting her to shuffle into the kitchen and complain about the price of electricity. Sometimes I'd hear the house settle at night, and my body would tense like someone was coming down the hallway. It was quiet in a way I'd never experienced before, quiet that didn't come with someone else's expectations. My mom started coming over on Sundays. Not every Sunday. Not right away. At first, she'd sit stiffly at the table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea like she needed warmth to speak. One day, she said, "I think your Nan was right," and then she started crying again, and I reached across the table and held her hand because whatever else my mom had done, she was also someone who'd lived her whole life being trained to keep the peace. Steve and Rita never apologized. Jordan never did either. Some relatives drifted away, uncomfortable with the fact that the family story had holes. Others surprised me. Cousins I'd barely spoken to message saying, "Nan loved you so much, and I'm glad someone decent got it," and one admitted quietly, "Your uncle's always been like that." The day it really hit me that I'd outplayed them wasn't when they backed off legally. It was months later at a cousin's birthday when Steve walked in, saw me across the room, and froze for half a second like his brain short-circuited, because he didn't know what power to use anymore. He couldn't threaten me with a will. He couldn't guilt me with Nan. He couldn't paint me as unstable because the facts had been spoken out loud by Nan herself. All he had left was his pride, and pride is a terrible weapon when everyone has already seen behind it. He looked away first, and I didn't feel victorious exactly. I felt solid, like for the first time, the story wasn't being told about me without me in the room, and didn't leave me that house to make me boss. She left it to keep me safe. She left it because she knew exactly who would try to take it, and she didn't want my life negotiated over a dinner table by people who treat love like a transaction. So yeah, my family tried to take my inheritance. They came at me with paperwork and pressure in the old familiar script. Don't make this hard. I didn't outplay them with a grand speech or a mic drop. I outplayed them by listening to the one person in that family who saw the whole board, by bringing my own folder, by refusing to sign away my future because someone else called it peace, and by letting the truth, boring, documented, undeniable truth, do what it always does when you finally stop hiding it. They left that dining room speechless because for once, I didn't shrink. I didn't apologize for existing. I didn't trade myself for quiet. I just sat in my grandmother's chair, held her letter in my shaking hands, and did exactly what she asked me to do. I didn't let them talk me out of my life.